Record. Perfect. Okay, now I have an unstable internet connection. All right, we're back. I hope you feel as excited and happy as I do right now to be sitting directly next to my good friend and yours, Elisabet Rodriguez Dennehy.
Hi.
We're live from the same place, which is why today we pushed it from the East Coast lunchtime to East Coast dinner time. So we are joining you now at a very great time. Hopefully all of you have had a really nice work day. And if you haven't had a nice work day, hopefully we can brighten it up a little bit for you. Elisabet has some amazing things for you today. We are super excited. First, we want to tell you we're coming close to the end. We're going to be done with this series pretty soon, but your feedback has been tremendous. So we are not done. We are just almost done with this series. Next week, we're going to be talking about first-time parents, mothers, dads, the things that you haven't thought of, the things that you're going to need to negotiate. That is going to be a really meaty topic. But today, we are talking about stay-at-home fathers. Elisabet.
We are, and here's what happened. As we were crafting together the program, we realized that one of the areas that's less addressed, less emphasized, and shame on us women, less really talked about, are the men in our lives, the fathers of our kids, and how much in a way we take for granted both sides. The in and outs in the work environment of men who really want to be involved as caretakers, active parents. And we want to give you, like we always do, an idea of what are the perceptions around men who really want to get more involved with family. What are the issues when we or they are not able to feel that they have an opportunity for accommodation? What are the consequences? What's the backlash? What is it that's still permeating this dialogue? It's fascinating to do the research. I was sharing with Shannon today some of the things I read. Well, actually, we read. And they were eye-openers. Because we felt when we were doing this research that it could have been written in 1898, and we're in 2018, and so a lot of opportunity for growth and shifting of mindsets. And of course, what can we do? Men who are listening, or who keep you listening in the future, please listen up. This is for you. And the women, please listen up. We need to make some changes. And so, Shannon, before we get into the nitty-gritty, what has been your experience with working dads?
You know, it's funny because my experience has largely been that working dads are no different than working men who aren't dads. Mm-hmm. So my experience has generally been men cross that threshold into parenthood and they're the same guy. They're revered the same way, they're regarded the same way, and nobody really thinks of them any differently.
And yet, one of the things that we're finding out is that when men, particularly the younger generation, are stepping up to say, I want to be involved when my child is born, I want to be involved in some of their activities, I do want to be the one taking them to soccer game. They get a really bad response, particularly in the work environment, obviously from their peers, and unfortunately also by women. So let's think about, and let's talk about the perceptions. And perception is, it's not, caretaking is not a role for men. If you are involved in caring for your child, you're lazy. It's like you want to slack off, you're really not committed to work. What are you doing changing diapers? Who are you talking to me about going to a birthday party with your children? That's unheard of. Women are the ones that are supposed to be taking care of the kids. So what a lot of what we read talks about the men mentality. the way it used to be back in the
50s.
And yet it's alive and well. And let me give you one example. And this was almost like it broke my heart. There was this man who took 2 days to help his wife care for the kids. They had more than one. One of the kids was really sick, so he stayed in the house for 2 days helping her. And when he came back, he was publicly abused by his boss. Here's what's very sad. I mean, it was like admonished. The boss was a pregnant woman.
Shocking.
Shocking, right?
Shocking. Yes, shocking.
So that's how entrenched this issue is. And we're going to talk more about it going forward, but this is a golden opportunity for all of us. Because the moment a man feels that type of treatment, he really understands. He's feeling that sense of, there's a backlash just because I want to be a father. And so that's what we've been going through forever. And so these are moments in which we can leverage and have great conversations to say, listen, we need to address this issue in a holistic way. Now, what is the impact? And this is really another very alarming piece of information that we need to be aware of. Demotion, derailment, people get fired, they lose their job. I'm going to make reference. Shannon and I were talking about this book that we found. It's called All In. The author is Josh Levs, Levs. And he's become the champion of this issue. We invite you to get his book, because it's a story about what happened to him when he was really pretty much forced to be part of this caretaking scenario for health reasons with his wife and his kids. And the last thing that I wanted to point out at you in terms of impact is that 28% of the claims made for caregiving complaints, lack of opportunity or any legal issues around caregiving complaints, 28% are being filed by men. Did you know that, Shannon?
That is amazing to me. That statistic is amazing to me. And, puzzling in my head trying to understand, is that because men are more aware that the caregiving challenges are not okay, so they're more willing to advocate for themselves and say, we're going to put an end to this? Or are we seeing so many more men take on that role of caregiver?
And you know what? I think it's become a perfect storm if we think about it. We went through a financial crisis in 2008. Many people, men, women, got dislocated from their traditional work environment. Many stories I heard, the wives kept the job, the men lost their jobs. Mm-hmm. And so there were so many things going on that pushed this family thing we call, parenting, mm-hmm. to be sort of like shuffled. And we also think we see is that younger people, men and women, are looking at quality of life in a different way. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do we agree?
I agree. And I think, we thank the millennials for that.
I do.
We thank the millennials. Thank you, millennials. We're coming at you from different generations. I think the millennials are really pushing this issue in a way that allows the rest of us to have this conversation.
And I think you've mentioned before, some couples like Shannon and her husband fall into this new pattern very organically, because you've mentioned before, from the beginning, the two of you sort of talked about what do I do and what do you do, right?
We did.
Refresh memory.
Yes, definitely. So we had a very serious conversation to say, and this is very unsexy, I know, for those of you that are newly engaged or newly married. This happens and it's healthy, but we did a division of responsibilities chart. So, we pulled out good old Excel and said, which ones are yours and which ones are mine? And it really cut down on challenges, but What that left him with doing is the grocery store and the cooking. I do neither of those ever. In fact, he was on a bike trip a couple of weeks ago, and I had to walk into Trader Joe's, and I said, I don't know where's the cereal bar?
Where do I go? Where do I go? And you know, it now, this is what I'm thrilled. Now we're having this conversation and we can laugh at it and we can be more public. And we just have to create this type of reality with more openness, right? And so Josh Lev has a lot of great interviews. And I'm mentioning him because he's like the prototype of the issue, right? He went through issues that have to do with healthcare, issues that have to do with the fact that I like to be a father, and issues that have to do with, and my company, CNN, was not supported. And of all the categories of people who are entitled to paternity leave, the white man is down there. And it was a surprise to him. And so what do we do? What do we do with this issue, right? One of the things that is mentioned, and we've mentioned about parenting as a whole, and all the different topics that we've been talking about, is start conversations early. I think it's about time that even at the moment in which we start with our interview process, we start to ask, you know, what is your policy? And give me examples of how you handle this. And how is it that you accommodate? And you're very frank saying, I want to feel that I can stay here for a long run. My life will change. I will have children who will grow up, but meanwhile, while they're growing up, I might need some flexibility. How do you, company, see this flexibility experience? What do you offer? Because if we start early on, I think that is a very big step. What do you think, Shannon?
I think it's great. I think it's great advice for dads to set the table ahead of time. And I think when dads can bring that conversation to their workplace early and often, it helps them to say, hey, I value my family. I value my family time. And that's something in 2018 that is very refreshing about fatherhood.
And you know, something that I feel it's inevitable. Once you start to talk about it, two things happen. Other men and women who listen up are given the permission to speak freely.
Right.
And people who are entrenched in the way they think things are, very slowly, but surely enough, start to understand that there's something here that's changing. So having a conversation that's purposeful, and this is something that we all need to do. I'm being very vocal about this. My son is married to a woman who really loves her job. She loves what she does. And they're having some conversations about how are we going to do this? And he loves his job, and he's doing extremely well. And so there might be moments in which they have to accommodate certain things that he's going to have to do and certain things she's going to have to do. And so we're having really interesting conversations on Sunday dinners about how is it that they're thinking of putting this reality together once they think, you know, they start to think about having a family. So that's very important. Number two, your specific circumstances. One of the things that Shannon and I have been talking a lot about is this issue is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not a cookie-cutter approach. Legislation is needed, but at the same time, we need to really start to create a dialogue that conveys what are my circumstances so that we can work together to get things resolved. Mm-hmm. Have you had any experiences at work in which you have seen this type of accommodation happen?
You know, I think having dads talk about this is new. It's a new phenomenon. It's a new phenomenon for me. The story you told at the beginning where the boss who was upset about the man taking off being a pregnant woman was shocking, but it also probably rings true because we hold so fast to that stereotype of women being the caretakers. And, you know, there are so many fathers that are pulling their weight that we need to be having this conversation.
Yeah, and so I think part of what we need to be very smart about is to be clear about the pattern that, or the environment or the circumstance that's true to me so that I can convey it with HR, with friends, and people get the whole picture. One of the things about this topic, parenting, again, is that this is not going to last forever. This is a discrete period of time. And so if we're smart about how is it that we manage 4, 5, 10 years, it's all going to be good for everyone. Be aware of the biases and entrenched issues. Don't assume that because you're in a room all with young men, that all these young men are going to really buy in into your idea of parenting. Because many young men are still in the Mad Men world. And so be aware that the issues are there and just, you know, gauge the room. Well, have you seen that at work?
You know, I can't say I personally have ever worked at a place like that. But when you think about this locker room mentality and you hear this, you know, kind of locker room mentality and you think 5 years prior, you might have been that same person that's thinking, you know, who are you now? You're this dorky old dad and you want me to do extra work on your project because you want to go to your kid's soccer game. And I think that's one of the realities that we face. But one of my favorite things that you say is that your time at home with your child as a working parent, it's finite. And I never thought about it that way before, but it's finite.
It is. It's finite. I was reading the other day a beautiful essay. Actually, Shannon sent me the essay of a woman who is exactly my age, 65. She's saying, wow, this is interesting. I went through depression, kids, family. They grew, they married. I'm 65, and this is a brand new chapter professionally for me. And it used to be like 65, we were ready for, you know, a home. And now 65, we're saying, I'm ready for another 20 years of more. And the reason why we're bringing this up is because we have to put this in perspective, right? And we have to say to ourselves, if this is going to be finite, if this really happens for this long, in terms of the intensity of parenting, let's be smart and do it right. Now, the one of the things that we want to bring to your attention is the following. I'm going to start the topic with an example and have Shannon give me some of her observations. Have you been in a playground or have you been shopping for groceries? Well, you don't shop for that.
I'm never in the grocery store.
To the playground. And have you seen a dad with kids and the rest of the moms? Have you seen any difference in the conversation they have about him?
I wish I could say no, but I've got this really beautiful wooden playground near my house, and it's like when you get inside of it, if you want to maintain, you know, eye contact with your child, you have to get inside of it with them. And there's often lots of mothers, and there's infrequently fathers, and the mothers are all looking at the few dads with such awe, and they're just revering their presence and saying, it's so sweet that you're here playing with your kid.
And that is something we want to bring to your attention, both sides, particularly for women. That's called the pedestal effect. The pedestal effect. This is an effect that was researched by a professor called Tal Peretz, Peretz. And he said that there is a propensity for us, particularly women, to praise men for things that we typically do in an ordinary fashion. And we think that they're special and great heroes, Superman, men, and yet they're doing exactly what we're doing. It's only that it's being done by men. And we felt it was important to bring this up because this is exactly the core of this paradigm that's affecting men, it's affecting women, it's affecting families. And so what can we do to debunk the pedestal effect? What are some of the things you feel we can do?
So I think one of the things that we first have to do is catch ourselves thinking that. So as soon as you see a dad, you might see my husband in Trader Joe's, and you think, oh, what a great dad. You know, he's just pushing his child around, letting her try all the things and buying all of the things that she wants. We have to immediately say, I'm cognizant of that thought. I just had that thought. I have my own toddler in front of me in my shopping cart, and I'm thinking that guy's doing something spectacular.
Better than I.
Better than me.
And so catching ourselves, helping people catch themselves. So if we're in the playground and there is this observation, wow, look at him, that we jump to say, look at us. We are all in this together. This conversation, this issue can change only if we are alert. And if each of us become more rigorous in our thinking, right, and in our approach, I can tell you, once we started with this series, and as I'm been, meeting people, and particularly young people, I'm asking a lot about parenting and what are their needs and what do they find, and it's a constant issue. Men really do want to get more involved. And they're leery because of the backlash. At the same time, their heart tells them it's a good thing to be a dad.
Mm-hmm. I think so, and it's really refreshing. It's refreshing to see so many men stepping up to the plate. And you brought up the birthday party, and my daughter's in kindergarten, so we get invited to a lot of birthday parties. And there are just as many dads there with their kids, when your kid's in kindergarten, you have to stay at the birthday party. But there's just as many dads there as there are moms. And I think that was probably not at all my mother's experience.
No, it wasn't my mother's either. And it wasn't mine when I was raising my daughter. Even though my husband was one of those in which he was the outlier, the circumstances around my upbringing, or upbringing of our child, was very unorthodox. We had some very difficult issues. And so we had to take turns. I was a trial attorney at the time. And when you had to plead a motion, you had to be in court. And so that was a default companion. Dan handled it really well in a Latin culture, but he was really pretty much the only guy. Now, the other day I was walking around my neighborhood and I counted of the 5 people that I saw with strollers, 3 were men. Nice. And so that was really cool.
Nice.
And I said to myself, I'm going to be walking with my cat with my phone because I want to start taking pictures of them and posting them. And they were so comfortable with those babies. I loved it. So,
that's great.
Yeah, I know. Now, men, again, need to be aware of making the conversation starting from the beginning. Making sure that they convey the specifics of what's going on with them. Being very careful about how they express what's going on because of the backlash. They will really, right now, the environment is really hostile against them. And so whatever we can do, we have to support them. Women, we need to get involved in this conversation. And here's what I feel is the most important thing we can do. We need to stop and think, just like Shannon said. The moment we are about to praise, or to go into that place in which we go into that unconscious bias, men should do this, women should do that, we need to stop. We need to do it for us, we need to do it for our children, we need to do it for the family, for the stability of the new family environment. We're going to talk more about what parenting is really becoming in this new work environment. But women, we need to stop judgment. We need to welcome the moments in which we see men as a natural thing. And we need to help other women have those conversations. Let me ask you, Shannon, you talk about the division of labor as something that was very organic. How were you able to express your strategy with friends and family?
Okay.
Did they give you pushback or?
Okay, so I think generally, our family has tried my cooking or recognizes that I cannot cook, and they've always told me to bring the paper products anyway. So Luke was like a welcome thing for them. But I think when we talk about it with friends, it used to be almost that characterization of Mr. Mom. People would say, "Oh, Mr. Mom," and I would say, don't devalue what he does. Because I am a mom and I couldn't do the things that he does. And so I think people, they like it, they embrace it, but there's still that sort of jokiness around it. Like it's funny. This is a funny thing that he's a cook and I am not joking. This is not made up for TV. I cannot cook. And some of the things that we would say back are, look at the world's greatest chefs. Watch TV. Who are the Iron Chefs? They're men, right? They're men. So it's okay to be a professional chef, but to be an at-home cook is regarded to be the woman's job. And so when you start peeling back and unpacking what people think about those things, I think they become a little bit more cognizant, they become a little bit more aware, and then the conversation can kind of steer away from that dark place where men are they're meant to feel a little bit different because they're interested in being a very active parent and a very active part of the household.
Yeah, I had the chance and I call it privilege to share a friendship with a couple who were pioneers for me, example of this scenario more than 20 years ago. She is in the nuclear science field and in policy, and she's very driven. And he was also, he was an accountant, very successful. When they met, and they realized that her capacity or opportunity to do certain things were right in front of her. And he, frankly, was really interested in spending quality time with the girls. They had 2 girls. And he stayed at home. And this is a man who is, again, closer to my age. And he got all of it.
I bet.
Here's what I asked him. I said, tell me, what can I say on your behalf? He said 2 things. One, be strong inside, right? To your own self be true. It carries you through those ridiculous moments. But it's really about your marriage. It's really about what makes the 2 of them happy. And one of the things we want to do is interview these trailblazers, both men and women. We'll be doing some of that in the future, but to share and listen to their stories. His wife admires him in a very special way. She keeps saying he's such a so secure, so self-confident, because he really couldn't care less whether people, thought one way or another, which is really also very important. I don't really care what you think about me. I think that's part of what we have to do. As wives of guys who wants to stay home, take a break, be more participatory, we just need to get into that place of being a strong team. Anything else you want to add on before we sort of sign off? And we hope that we are leaving you with some good insights about the difficulty still of being a dad who wants to stay at home. The fact that the conversation is taking traction with all the pain that's associated with it, but we're moving forward. The fact that there are men who are being very public about the beauty of parenting and the fact that they want to do that. And the fact that women are starting to have to come along with the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think, one of the things that is super important for us to remember is not just the dads that we're connected to, so our own dad, the dads of the kids that we're close with, the dads of our own children, but also the dads that we work with and we work alongside, or we used to work with and work alongside that have decided to exit the workforce to take care of their children for a while. So, I want to shout out to all of those dads that are doing it, that are either being very active in their kids' lives while they're working, or who are deciding to take a break from working to be that primary caretaker. That's one of the things that I love the best about what's happening now is we're really pushing the status quo to say work-life balance includes life, and life often includes kids.
And that's phenomenal, right? Families bring with them huge responsibility, but there's a sense of joy brought by children for those of us who like parenting that is really not found anywhere else. And I think the one thing that has been difficult for me to witness, and I think we share this, is obviously that the work environment puts us in a place in which wanting to be more of a mom in certain moments or more present as a dad is penalized. It's inhuman, right? It goes against the grain of a good society. That's why Nordic countries are so happy because they don't have this issue there. Men can stay, women can stay, they have longer work leaves and extended leaves, and they get it. And it's a model that we should start to look into a little bit closer. We hope we leave you with a sense of awareness. We hope you're going to go out there and you're going to be more proactive, observing and speaking up on behalf of the family, which is mom and dad. And the moments in which you see those dads, in your mind, good for you. But let's stop being surprised. Let's just take it for what it is. A dad with a stroller, with a baby. Just the same way we've done it before. And so we hope to see you next week. What's the topic?
Next week, we cannot wait to tell you about some of the myths and truisms of being a brand new parent. You people do not know what you're in for, but we're going to help you. We're going to tell you some tips and tricks. Yeah. If you're watching right now and you have some tips and tricks you want to share, let us know. We love your feedback. Your feedback has helped us to shape every one of these. And we're so excited to be talking to you about these things that it feels like nobody's talking about, and you definitely don't want to talk about at work. So let us know what else is working for you, what's interesting for you. Thanks to all the dads and moms who are shuttling their kids to soccer games and wrestling and birthday parties. Thanks to all of you. What this is about is a life that we have a very small amount of time to leave an impression on.
Trust me, you're here today, gone tomorrow, and what happened? See you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.